Wow, this stage is something. Talk about jump. So I did jump. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for the introduction. Thank you for the welcome to your wonderful territory, Larry. It's nice to see you again. I'll reintroduce myself. I'm Leslie Bonshor. I'm from the Shiakton First Nation. That's okay. Spelt weird. Pronounced Shiakton. It's part of the Stolo Nation out in the Fraser Valley, and also from the Nooksack Indian tribe on the other side of the border, because back in the day, Stolo days, we didn't have borders. So there's a lot of Stolo people actually that are from both sides. That's on my father's side. My father is the late Siamatel. Siamatel is one of our oldest Stolo names, and my mother, Laurie. I am the granddaughter to Ethel and Charles Fisher. And I am a grandmother, a mother, a daughter, an auntie, a sister, and a wife. And that is from which I do my work as an executive director of Aboriginal Health at Vancouver Coastal Health. And no, I do not have a presentation, and they used the word presentation yesterday quite frequently, and I'm like, hey, no. I'm not here to do a presentation. I was invited to speak a little bit about my own experience working with research. And actually, the funny thing is, this data governance word that is put on the agenda that I was going to speak about, that alone sets me off in a way that I can't quite describe, especially when I have Gwen Phillips in the room, who could clearly articulate so much more about data governance. But I'll speak to data governance about from my own experience as an Indigenous woman doing research with my Indigenous communities and partners. So, just a bit more introduction. How did I get on IRSI? Again, the name Link Kessler was mentioned. I met Link when I put up my hand to sit on an advisory committee for the Faculty of Medicine. Of course, working in healthcare for the last 12 years, trying to shape and change the way we provide care for our Indigenous population and trying to improve health outcomes and help that journey in a better way. I thought, okay, I've been at this for a long time from the health authority perspective, from services and talking to physicians long after they've left school. So I thought, okay, how do I get out in front of this? So Faculty of Medicine, that's the place. Got to start there. No more graduating without all this knowledge about what it means to provide culturally safe care. Can't do it alone, Gwen. No, it's not just my responsibility, but for myself as a disruptor, and I use that word in a gentle way, a disruptor to what has always been happening. I love the word that was used this morning about extracting data and information from our communities. The same thing happens when people come out of UBC or SFU or any of our lovely universities without the knowledge that they need to provide good, safe care. It's me and my team and others that are trying to catch them up to the knowledge that they needed. So that's why I thought, okay, Faculty of Medicine, I'll go there. I'll put my hand up for that. And I met Link. And we started talking about, I was sharing some of my experience working in Fraser Health, particularly in research. I started there in 2005. By 2007, I accepted an actual permanent role. And so then they put my name on their website. Then it said, oh, we have an Aboriginal director at Fraser Health Authority. So when academics went to look for partners, Indigenous partners, Aboriginal partners, for their research, my name would pop up. Of course it would. Google does that for you. So I was getting emails and requests to join research projects for all sorts of reasons. All sorts of things that just didn't sit well with me. You have to know that entering into this kind of work as an Indigenous woman, you have to really be grounded. You have to know who you are, know who you represent, and know what you're going to do. And that everything I do and say, I have got my grandparents, my ancestors watching over every word I say. And so I have to be careful. And I have to make sure that whatever I agree to and whatever I do, that my grandmother would never go tisk tisk, right? So I know that. So every time somebody called me and said, would you sign on to this research project? I was like, nope, that's not my job. I'm not here to speak on behalf of Indigenous people. I'm not here to represent them. I'm here to hold space for them. I'm here to say, okay, yeah, I hear what you want to do, but nope, that's not the way it works. There has to be this power shift. This power imbalance had to change. And this is why we use all these RE words, right? We're talking about reconciliation, reclaiming, revitalizing, returning. And I see research as retelling, okay? And researching. That's what Indigenous people do. So I sat there at my desk with all of these emails and a lot of carrots. And the carrots were, we'll pay your community for extracting this information we want to get. And I thought, oh, this is just not right. What can I do? How can I change this? So I started off on developing a bit of a strategy around how can I mobilize the Indigenous voice. These are my Stolo people, by the way. Fraser Health Authority is Stolo territory. There's a bit of Inklakatma, but mostly Stolo territory and Tsawwassen. And I went and I met with them and I said, you know, how do we switch this around? How do I find out what's important to you so we can create an Indigenous-led health research strategy? And that way, when the academics reach out to me and say, we want to do some research on youth suicide or diabetes, I can go to my list and say, oh, well, as a matter of fact, Seabird Island First Nation has acknowledged that they would like to learn more and lead some of their own research around youth suicide. So that was the conversation I had with Link. And he said, so you mean you've already done this community-led, community-based participatory research? I said, yes, we have. Yes, we have. In Fraser Health, there is a list of priorities that continues to get refreshed that the First Nations themselves have determined is important to them. So knowing that, and knowing that there is a way of doing this, and putting the power and the influence into the hands of the First Nations really creates a different approach, and they feel different about it. One of the key things also about being able to find and link those First Nations to the researchers allowed us to also build all of that, again, the word protocol, which is still, words are important. And I don't like that word, but I don't have anything to switch around quite yet, but I think we'll get there. What we mean when we say protocol, what we're really saying is, know the people you're partnering with. Know the people you're collaborating with, not half collaborating with. Collaborating, I love that statement this way. It's not half collaboration. When you say your partner, it better be a reciprocal partnership. So you're not extracting information. You're going in and you're leaving information. You're helping that community find their own information so that they can use it for what they need it to be used for. They need it so that they can be empowered themselves to say to the academic world, to the health authorities, to their other service providers, this is what we know, this is what we want, and this is how you'll get it. So protocols are a bridge, they're about a conversation, it's about getting to know people. We talked quite a bit yesterday about this, how important it is to understand and know that community before you go there. And just showing up on the doorstep or just knocking on the door and saying, hi, I'm here to save the day, is not going to work, and we know that. So you want to have this gentle, welcoming approach, and this is why I'm really glad to hear the team is going to have some sort of First Nations Indigenous engagement coordinator, which is really important. And it's important to make sure that person is also either from the community or knows the community and understands and is already acknowledged as being friendly. And then they'll be allowed in. So being able to actually go into those communities, build those relationships, making sure that whatever you are doing in partnership with those First Nations communities actually builds up their capacity They're going to end up with their own research assistants. They're going to end up with their own young person that might be identified to carry on and go into university, having earned some credits with you through this process. So going back to my meeting with Link in this conversation about, what does this look like? And he said, Leslie, you've got to get involved with this IRSI. You have to step up and do this. And I said, well, yeah, okay, I will share and I will come. But it has to be for a future state, an idea of that during this, there was a slide here that showed the president's apology. I was there at that apology. I'm also part of the President's Advisory Committee, and every word was selected so carefully, and I feel really obligated as an advisory member of both that committee and this one to hold him to his word. And so yesterday at our first IRSI meeting, I said, so what is the commitment of UBC to use IRSI? And it's vague, but I guess the intentions are being set, which is also extremely important. But the accountability needs to happen. So maybe it's not here yet, but it has to be future state. If we're in the land of reconciliation, and that too needs to be defined by our Indigenous population, if we are going to reconcile, and I wave my magic wand, and by the time my 8-year-old grandson is here at UBC and wants to enter into some research, he's already going to know that working with Musqueam or working with Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, or any other Indigenous population here would be mandatory. It would be absolutely a normal practice for him to include the Indigenous population. It'd be absolutely normal practice for him to understand that whatever area he was going to research, he had sure better know where the data is going to sit and the change that that data is meant to inform. So status quo is not okay. If you're doing research, it is because we're trying to make a change. It's not just because we want to validate our story that we've made up. It's because we want to make a change. So who's the change going to be with? Who needs to receive this information to make the change that we're looking for? What policy needs to change? This is why the word data governance for me still resonates with this hierarchical infrastructure of ownership and control. To me, I think our Indigenous people, from what I understand, from what I've heard from people, is it's more about our sovereignty. It's about going back to who does own this. It is ours. Please only use it to help us. We've gone far too long knowing that we are always reported out in a very deficit-based picture. I'm an Indigenous woman. I've done so much work with the Indigenous women in the downtown east side. They're not all murdered and missing. They're not all drug addicts. They're not all street entrenched. There are some really well women in the downtown east side. There are some strong, beautiful Indigenous women in the downtown east side. Let's hear about that. Let's talk about that. Let's research how they were able to stay so well and so strong. And then let's add more of that so that the rest of the women can see that and they can help each other. I feel like I'm kind of going off on my tangent now, but this is my world of disrupting. This is about being true to what we say we're going to do, hold ourselves accountable. I know these are baby steps. IRSI is a baby step. It's actually an acknowledgement, so I applaud that. It's an acknowledgement that we need to do things differently. It's a first attempt. That's why I was like, when we were trying to figure out a strategy in our terms of reference, I said, well, you know what? The terms of reference would actually change quite rapidly as we progressed in reconciliation. So the words we put on paper today, if and when we are long down the road on reconciliation, that language will change, and the words we use will change. And I look forward to that. As Elder Larry Grant said, we have been researched. We have been researched way too much. And the research needs to be shared. We need to retell our story. I'm involved with another research project that I'm so proud of, that I started way back in Fraser Health days, and we still continue. It's a Canadian Institute of Health research grant on land-based resiliency for Indigenous youth. Our youth were killing themselves. Suicide was far too often and rampant. 2012, we had such a huge spike in suicide, and we said, enough is enough. What can we do? We have to own this as Indigenous women, as Indigenous workers, leadership in our communities. We have to figure out why this is happening and get to the root causes. So the land-based resiliency and the community participatory research that we've been doing has been focused on researching. And we're very careful to say that. And we've created not only Indigenous methodology, but an Indigenous research team. So for every non-Indigenous academic on our research team, there's an Indigenous person on our research team. So I'm the Indigenous PI, and I have a non-Indigenous co-PI, okay? And throughout that whole process, it's literally taken us 2 years, just 2 years, to indigenize our team. So by that I mean helping our non-Indigenous person on our team understand our way and how we were going to conduct this research based on the cultural practices of our people, using the words and language of our people, and focusing on, as Loretta said, not toolboxes. Ours is a basket. So we have a knowledge basket, not a toolbox. Every little detail, every word that we choose for this research is chosen specifically to ensure that we are privileging that Indigenous lens, that we're not following Western ways and the academic way, but we're following our way. And it very, very intentionally calling it research. Finding a way to get back to the ways our Stalo people used to live and how much we honored our youth and their role in community, that they would never have found a way to take their own lives. Our lives are far too important. Our gifts are too important. We are watched by our elders, and we want to reinstate all of that, like just revitalize that. And it's working wonderfully. We've seen some really great changes and advancements with our youth connecting with elders and getting back on the land. So that is true ownership, control, access, possession of the work, of the information, of the tools that we're using in our act of sovereignty, our act of trying to find our way back to the way we were before we were disrupted by colonial systems. Research, return, repair, reconcile, but most importantly, respect. I hope that this plants a little bit of idea into your minds about how we can approach this work differently and how we can do more than start these kinds of initiatives, but hardwire them into how we do our work. So that when you go to apply for a research grant and you want to look and collect data about Indigenous people, you think really hard about respecting that data, respecting the people that you're collecting it about, and making sure that you're actually doing it to ensure there's an impact and a difference in the outcomes after you're completed. I'm honored to be part of this, to the newly formed IRSI. I think it's exciting. I think for far too long we've had a lot of research done that we haven't been able to affect change. In my role at Vancouver Coastal Health, nobody dares ask me to be on the research team without a really good solution attached to it. But we are doing it. We are part of research. We're doing really good research and finding ways to ensure that we have respectful relationships and a good understanding of what we're intending to do. And also making sure that we have a multi-pronged approach to this. It isn't just about the research that's being done, it's actually about the funders who are providing the research funding as well, to make sure that they're not funding activities that include Indigenous population without Indigenous population. So it's been said over and over again, nothing for us without us, and I look forward to continuing the conversation with you as much as I can stay today. All my relations. Thanks,
Thank you. Did I not tell you that this woman would bring energy and inspiration? Was I not right? So we're unbelievably on time. In fact, we're ahead of ourselves in terms of the agenda. And Leslie has agreed to hang around just in case there are comments or questions. A little bit of engagement from the audience. We've got, I think, a mic that we can walk around. So any comments or questions, thoughts, ideas?
Because of the diversity of the health system in British Columbia and the 5 competing health authorities, and they're always kind of like trying to one up each other or one down each other, etc. I think it's important that we look at precedent wherever precedent can be set. And there is that tripartite table that's been structured to try the table where the health transfer, the NIB branch, excuse me.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering whether or not we could actually elevate some of this conversation and the precedents has been set, because it's challenging in some of the regions for the nations to actually get a voice at the table, etc. So I think there's a necessity for us to actually network a little bit differently, and perhaps BBC can work some of these relationships outside of the existing ecosystem of the health, whatever, right? So I would make a recommendation that we look at bringing some of the key thinkers that are doing research or supporting native governance and other initiatives at the regions through a separate process to convene a conversation on how we can actually get some of the standards in there. Because we look at some of the training for competency, etc. We know that that's a good start.
Yeah.
But we know we've got to actually get down to the ground, because this is where the difference between ethics and morality start to actually take some meaning.
Absolutely.
So thank you again.
Absolutely, I totally agree. We're only working with UBC right now. Like, this conversation is strictly UBC, and hopefully others will learn from it. But yeah, we need an umbrella and all of the health authorities to fall underneath it. Right now, Gwen, honest to goodness, for me, I've just been pushing this boulder up a mountain for years, and collectively we'd be so much stronger. Absolutely, I agree. Get on that, will you? Anyone else? Comments, questions? No, let me. Oh, there's one. Hi.
Can you hear this? Yeah. Thank you. This whole thing has been a bit inspirational, would be the word I think I would use, because for a long time I was feeling like when we worked with universities that we were holding a sledgehammer over their head, and they were so scared and paranoid that they couldn't really do anything, and we couldn't have a useful relationship, and we're turning this into a human exercise. So my only comment is I'm really thankful for that.
Yeah, it does feel good, doesn't it? There's so many great things going on all over the place. I think corporate Canada, the whole country, is actually really starting to pay attention to us as Indigenous people. They're realizing, and not in a thou shalt way either. It actually is feeling very, very much like a social movement, a humanitarian effort to connect and really get to understand. I tell you, in Vancouver Coastal Health, we've trained over 1,200 people in this last year on nothing more than sharing the history of our people. And I would say at least 80% of them had no idea. And so history, you know, in order to get to reconciliation, truth and reconciliation, truth needs to be told first.
I just wanted to thank you for your inspirational words. I guess the other aspect of this and the hopefully at some point as we look into the future, there's a repository of useful information from a research project that might be regionally specific, but be helpful to others across the nation, of Indigenous communities, because we've been researched a number of times in various areas, but and it's not efficient for our communities. We've got very limited resources. So if we could find that information, a repository that other communities can learn from and move forward and make progress on as a result of some other research done somewhere else, because we are limited in our resources, not only on capital, but on human resource. So I think this kind of thing can help to catapult that type of repository so others can learn from research done somewhere else. So thank you.
Absolutely, for sure. Like our Indigenous research on the land-based resiliency in Stolo territory, we're in the second phase where we're actually scaling it up. So it was piloted in Seabird Island First Nation. The scale up brings it out to Sumas First Nation, another urban group out of the Mission Indian Friendship Center, and then a remote group called New Hawk. So Bella Bella, or Bella Coola, sorry, I always get those two mixed up. New Hawk in Bella Coola. And so once that part completes, it is the intentions of the project is that any community could pick up and use our basket of knowledge and apply it in another Indigenous community. So we'll watch for that. And yeah, I think there was mentioned that one of the functions of IRSI is to have a place where we can capture all of these best practices and actually have access to them to use them, whether they be books, reports, videos, all of those sorts of things. Anybody else? No? Oh, one more.
So much. The goosebumps definitely caught over here as well. I just wanted to get your thoughts around opportunities for perhaps, I don't want to say enforcing sounds like a strong word, but when we create these guidelines and these recommendations, they only go so far and not everyone will necessarily pick them up or embrace them. And
Yeah.
What are the thoughts to get them to listen and to get them to use these guidelines?
Well, we had a little bit of conversation about that yesterday at our first advisory meeting, and I did ask that exact question. If we're at a current state, what is current state, and what is the future state? And if we're not moving and progressing by being able to count something about our impact and the changes that are being made at UBC, then we're not going to be able to demonstrate that we're having success at all. So what do those indicators look like? And so what I suggested is, okay, if UBC has 100 research projects today and 6 of them have used the services of IRSI, that's not good, right? Like that's not a good enough impact. But if we come back next year and we find out that of 100 research grants, 90 of them have used IRSI's support in order to engage the Indigenous population, then we're looking at success, right? So what gets measured gets done. Right? And from our lens, from my Indigenous, and I only speak from myself, in participating at this table, I will be asking for proof of change. I'll be finding a way to ask UBC to demonstrate that they're making a difference. Because if they're not, then I have to disengage. So if you don't see me around that table in a couple years, you'll know that I felt defeated and that I wasn't sitting there and getting the change I was looking for. That's the level of my commitment, only while we're getting change. If it's not working and advice is advice is advice and advisories, then, you know, as Indigenous people too, we have to disengage. And when we disengage, you have to know why. And you have to start asking, why aren't they there anymore? It's because we weren't feeling heard. So that's my commitment to this IRSI table. And these two ladies are nodding their head. They're going, yeah, we know. She's going to make sure we're doing what we said we were going to do. Okay, so we don't know all of the success indicators yet. We need to do community engagement. We need to do these kinds of gatherings and engage with the Indigenous population, because success cannot be self-written. You can't write your own report card. Your report card needs to be written by the population you're meant to help and make things better for. So our Indigenous population has to decide what success looks like for UBC. Did that answer you enough? Yeah. Anyone else? Oh, back there.
My name is Morris Prosser. I'm from Lillooet. Well, my community is actually the Chalath First Nation, which is near Lillooet, but it's just easier to say you're from Lillooet. I work for my nation's land use and occupancy studies, so I just want to say it's really interesting that you're talking about data governance as well as this idea of sovereignty with that, which I believe is where my nation is going with that project. And currently we actually have not involved any post-secondary institutions in that. But I definitely think I see potential here, perhaps, to form collaborations as well. Yeah. And I just, on a personal, I just want to say hi. I was involved in the, I believe it was the pilot project for the Seabird Island study.
When you were at U of B.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Winona was a good, or was a good mentor of mine. So thank you very much.
Good to see you again. Okay. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for your questions, and thank you for your time. And I will be buzzing around here till lunchtime. I'm sorry I can't spend the rest of the day with you. And if you ever want to reach out to me, because I am sitting at this IRSI advisory committee, please let me know. I'm happy to hear from you. Thank you.